right? Would you say the regional bloc, ECOWAS, has exhausted all options on the table that could be adopted to resolve this issue?
Considering the memorandum of the ECOWAS body, a military intervention isn't out of place for the regional bloc to use to quell the um, situation on ground. However, considering the consequence that might come with a military intervention, I do not think they've exhausted it. I believe that there are still more parts to go through to make sure they get to a level ground, a middle ground where we will resolve issues without bringing another conflict into the region.
All right, I want to go to you, of course, El Bashar. Do you see a military intervention happening anytime soon, and what will be its implication on the region?
Well, we've seen many unlikely heroes during this time of negotiations and dialogue, one of them being the former Emir of Kano, and using his position and influence to be able to talk to the junta leaders of the coup to try and reach a dialogue and settlement. Yes, we're seeing a lot of movements and talks in terms of the military intervention aspect. However, in terms of the using civilian or other means and dialogue and negotiation, it does show and prove that they are trying all other avenues before resorting to the last one. However, as a quick reminder as well, this coup that has happened near the end of the previous month, since then, on the 13th of August, we've seen six national soldiers killed by insurgency groups in Niger. 2 days after that, on August 15th, Niger special forces were ambushed on the road that leads to Burkina Faso. So regardless of how this goes, and if they do want to go forward with the military intervention aspect, then they're also going to have to look at in the insurgency groups within the region and how that may affect the outcome of this situation, but also the local and national populations.
Idris, you talked about insurgency groups within the region. Now, do you think military intervention is necessary, considering the current security concerns across the Sahel?
Well, the security concerns of the Sahel not only is in West Africa, but also spreads to that of East Africa, as we talked yesterday regarding Sudan. However, in this situation here with these insurgency groups, we've seen a pattern of them being Islamist insurgency groups. There are multiple kind of operations and military trainings that these countries have taken part together to combat these insurgency groups. And with that kind of framework, it could very much well dissipate and collapse. Why? Because now we're having infighting between the states rather than the states combating terrorism within the region or insurgency groups. So there's a lot of potential and possibilities for this to extend, not only within the region of, or rather in the country of fighting, but it can spill over into other parts if mobilization of these insurgency groups are done. However, whether or not they will actually be involved and wish to involve themselves, that's a different situation. And we can zoom out a bit, and we can also say on how the Niger coup prime minister, the civil official that has been placed in charge, he recently came out on an interview with New York Times saying the junta will not call upon the Russian state-funded support or the Wagner Group essentially to support them, and this is an internal African issue, and they wish to resolve this that way without having the lens be put on them in a way of this is an international proxy war kind of thing. We can have debates about that as well, but for the time being, I'm pretty sure the neighbors within the region of ECOWAS are all very concerned, not for international, but domestically as well. As the previous guest just said, the way that ECOWAS has managed to cut electricity into the country the way it's been cutting its funding and aid, for example. These kind of things are much more damaging to their neighbors and to the average civilian than any kind of policy done internationally. But let's come back a bit. And in terms of the insurgency groups within the west side of Africa, will they step up and essentially find an opportunity to attack during these very troublesome times? Well, we've seen they've already have, as I earlier said, in terms of soldiers that have been killed by these insurgency groups. But it's tough enough to see states going at it as it is. With non-state actors involved, it can turn really messy.
All right, I want to believe Biola is back right now. Biola, just quickly, before... Okay, I mean, I just want to ask you, before I let you go in 30 seconds, that's to you, Idris, just quickly, what are your thoughts about talks about the democratic system of government not being maybe the best fit for all nations, particularly in Africa? What are your thoughts on this particular narrative?
Well, if we really want to get down into the thick of it, democracy in itself is a European thought and mindset that they try to copy and paste and bring onto the African continent. And considering we have our own African cultures and understandings of the world and politics, maybe back then it worked, but however, in a very globalized world where we are now, where in terms of identity, you can become whoever you want to be, having a democracy may not be the best system, but it definitely does give that belief of representation, right? And this is why this is happening. Essentially, though the Niger coup states that the reason they did this coup is because of the continuing deterioration of the security situation, it is also the reason why ECOWAS is getting involved, which is a whole load of other democratically elected nations. If these nations are not being able to uphold their values of democracy or their way of doing it, then what's the point of it? So this is why they're doing it. Essentially, if we had to take elections and we've managed to win them fair and square in some cases, like most people, then why is it that it's okay for other countries to do a military junta, not be exactly representative or have a mandate or a political mandate from its people?